Welcome back to the FYBS Playbook, Big Feelings, Real Caregiving from Toddlers to Teens. I'm Dr. Sandy Chafulias. I'm a mom, a psychologist.
And I'm Dr. Jess Kozlowski. We're two researchers, educators, and caregivers who have spent our careers asking the same question. What do kids actually need from the adults in their lives to grow through big feelings, not just with them?
And not just through them. So if you're new here, welcome. If you've been with us since episode 1, thanks for coming back. Each week, we explore one idea that doesn't get enough honest airtime in parenting books or staff meetings, and we bring the research. We bring our own experiences as caregivers, and we try to leave you with something real that you can use.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap of where we've been. In episode 1, we unpacked the developmental reason kids' big feelings catch us off guard. Episode 2 took us outside the home, into classrooms and gyms and grandma's kitchen, talking about how every adult in children's worlds matter. And episode 3 gave us the rupture repair cycle, how relationships break, and why repair is the skill we actually need to build as the adult caregivers.
Okay. So today we're talking about something that lives underneath all of that. Something that quietly shapes how kids feel in their bodies, how they show up in relationships, and how we as caregivers often feel at the end of a really long day.
Mm-hmm.
Today's episode is about loneliness.
And it's not just a feeling, as a condition,
Mm-hmm.
and one that is showing up in children and caregivers in ways that deserve more than a moment of acknowledgement.
Yeah, a big moment, a whole episode. As a reminder, our playbook uses a 3-2-1 structure. So we're going to explore 3 ideas, take 2 questions from the audience, and end with 1 takeaway to feel your best self.
Great.
Ready to get started?
Jump in.
All right. So we've been talking for episodes about what big feelings look like in their bodies, in your classrooms, on athletic fields. So today we want to name the one thing that doesn't get called often by its real name. Loneliness. Not sadness, not shyness, although certainly those are overlapping feelings. When we talk about loneliness, it's a specific experience of feeling that you don't belong, you aren't seen, or you aren't connected to the people around you.
And here's what the research tells us. This isn't a problem for just a few people.
That's right.
Just a couple of years ago, the U.S. Surgeon General named loneliness as a public health epidemic. And the data on youth is so striking. Even before the pandemic, more than 1 in 3 high schoolers reported persistent feelings of loneliness. Post-pandemic, those numbers have climbed.
So it's not just a silly problem that we should be brushing off as, they'll get over it. I really loved reading a brand new study by Anthony Ong and Mann, 2026 in American Psychologist, just came out. That it introduces the concept of cumulative social advantage. So hang on with me for a minute. So it's the idea that connection isn't just about how you feel today, but it's about how relationships over a lifetime compound into health and longevity outcomes. And so what they really found, in a nutshell, that lots of great stuff in there, but social disconnection in childhood isn't just uncomfortable. It's actually a predictor of that long-term physical and mental health.
Wow. So that's a big deal, both for now and the long term. So do we know why so much of this is happening now?
I mean, that's a really great question. And there's so many answers depending on who you talk to and who you ask. But let's try to summarize it. I had a chance recently to dive into this area when I was writing a piece on the youth loneliness epidemic for Psychology Today. And so the short answer is that there isn't a single or a simple answer. We might summarize kind of 3 overlapping factors. The first is the rise of screen-based social substitution, right? The second is a loss of unstructured peer time.
Right.
And the third could be an absence of adults who notice. So on that third one, as caregivers, we really need to pay attention to all of them, but for right now, let's really focus on that third one. So, Jess, what does loneliness actually look like in children at different ages? Because again, it's not just a stereotype of a kid sitting alone in the corner by themselves all the time, right?
That's right. Loneliness can look and feel different across ages. And so toddlers won't be able to name it, but they might cling, act out, have more frequent dysregulation that is communicating disconnection. And so the infants and toddlers at the height of the pandemic,
Hmm.
let's think about that. For toddlers, they had less social opportunities.
Right.
Their parents had increased levels of stress, always trying to
Definitely.
multitask, and they had less devoted attention and attunement to their toddler's needs. And so this turns into the school age child who says, "Nobody plays with me," but then goes home and retreats to a screen. So, I'm thinking back to a student I had who, I would now say was lonely. And she often would kind of be on the outside of a group. She, made bids to try to get in, but by fifth grade, she really was more comfortable with adults.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
and, she would always start with a compliment. So she would kind of bid in by, "Really like that shirt you're wearing today." Um,
To the adults and the kids?
More to the adults.
Okay.
But I really
Interesting.
think somebody had taught her that as a
Okay.
way to initiate. Um, but now in retrospect, I see that she was gravitating to adults because of the lack of peer connection. But then when we get to teenagers, this is the youth who has 400 followers but still feels invisible. Loneliness can
And
wear a
probably
lot of
doesn't think
costumes.
400's a lot even, right?
Possibly,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so, and then if children don't have language for it, it's going to show up in behavior that we may misread.
Okay. Those are some really great examples. So let's take that back to what caregivers are supposed to do with it, right?
Sure.
And starting with something really simple, and that is that step of recognizing. So we can't address what we don't name.
For sure.
One step toward solutions is exactly what we do in Feel Your Best Self, and that is recognize. Recognize the feeling exists, that it
Mhm.
has a name, and that it matters enough to take it seriously across different ages.
Absolutely. I think that's a great wrap on idea one.
I think so. Let's
All
go.
right. So, moving into a related idea two is the idea: what is technology actually doing to kids' sense of connection? We
Hmm.
really have a technology paradox. We're constantly connected, but potentially completely alone.
Hmm.
And so, this goes for kids too. Kids are more digitally connected than any generation in history, yet they're reporting historically high rates of loneliness. Do you have the numbers to share with us?
Sure. One of my favorites is coming from Common Sense Media, which is a nonprofit organization that provides independent age-based ratings and reviews for different TV shows.
Yep.
Now, you
Yep.
follow them, right? Movies, games, apps. Their goal is to help caregivers figure out whether specific digital content is safe, appropriate, and beneficial. So, anyway, here's something that they recently reported. Children ages 8 years and under are spending about 2.5 hours a day with screen media.
Hmm.
So by age 8, 2 of every 3 children have their own tablet. And basically almost every 97% of children or students report using their phones during the school day. And the crazy part of that I still am trying to grapple with is that they are receiving a median, which is average, of 237 notifications every day, but a quarter of them, so 25%, are arriving during school hours. That is not connection. That is what I would say interruption.
That is a lot of interruption. And the mental health data is tracking directly onto that.
Hmm.
The US Surgeon General's advisory said that children and adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have double the risk of mental health problems, including depression and anxiety. And we might feel like it's only a problem in some places, but it's really everywhere.
Hmm.
We're here in Connecticut, and in Connecticut, more than 4 out of every 5 students is reporting 3 or more hours of daily screen time for non-academic purposes. So this is beyond what they're doing academically. And almost all teens report using social media, with more than a third saying they use it almost constantly. Almost constantly. And so that deserves a pause.
Definitely does. I'm just thinking about what my parents worried about versus what I worry about now or what you
Yeah.
worry about now. For my parents, it was TV and the launch of things like MTV. And
Mhm.
boy, oh boy, for those of you out there that remember the reference, did I want my MTV? Um, but it's not that those old concerns disappeared. It's just they keep adding and revising TV, then phones, now social media, now AI. So every generation of caregivers has inherited the last problem and got new ones on top of it.
Absolutely. It's getting really hard to navigate. My kids are younger, so we haven't quite got to the social media space yet, but it even shows up with the games they want to play, the um, content they want to watch.
Hmm.
And so much of it is flashy and fast. And at different times, we've had to do kind of a reset with each of them. We
Hmm.
find that our kids are having a tough time turning it off, or they're more dysregulated during non screen time. And so, we feel like that level of action and reward was just really overwhelming their brains. Didn't explain that to them. And so really did a reset to help make that normal play, exciting as it should be. And I'm not quite at the age and stage for AI chatbots yet, thankfully. Um, but Child Mind Institute is saying that, we need to be watching this. Teens are increasingly turning to AI for emotional support.
Hmm.
And,
Yep.
that's not necessarily harmful in and of itself, but it's becoming a substitute for the harder, messier, more rewarding work, human connection.
Yeah. It's
That's
supposed to be
concerning.
harder and messier,
Yeah.
right? And so true because, an AI will always validate. It won't misunderstand you, won't be tired and grumpy like I
Yes.
was yesterday, won't have its own bad day. But that means it also doesn't really know you because being human is messy, right?
Yeah,
And tricky. And that distinction is really important for development.
absolutely. And so the question becomes, how do we navigate it? Fortunately, we're seeing more and more resources to help. And the underlying consideration is how daily technology activities align or contradict with your values.
Hmm. Okay.
And so the Connecticut Department of Education is working on guidance and setting standards for digital citizenship. And part of that includes resources for families, like a family tech plan and a digital wellness check in. And so, really having those regular conversations about how you're spending your digital time and whether it's matching what you say matters to
Hmm.
you. And that's really, a best practice in building social and emotional skills that are needed through life, not just about recognizing feelings, but building the habits they're going to facilitate well being.
Habits. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you thinking about this?
I have to be really honest here. I don't think I did it well. My kids are in their 20s now. And I clearly remember those years, the fights about when to get a phone. That was
Oh
the
my
big thing.
gosh.
I
Yeah.
mean, forget about smartphones,
Yep.
but when to even get a phone. And then came the
Social media.
arguments about social media. And what I realized now looking back is that a lot of that conflict, I think, was because there was limited guidance at the time. Nobody told us what was going to happen or handed us a roadmap to
Yeah.
figure out how you navigate. So, what's really stuck with me about the work that organizations like Common Sense Media are doing is the centering of family conversations, right?
Hmm.
So, like, as the adult, positioning yourself as a learning partner instead of a rule enforcer.
I like that.
Yeah, asking things like, well, what would you want me to know about how you use this? I totally feel that because those questions become conversation and invitation rather than an interrogation, which is, I think, what happened for us. And looking back, I wish it was those conversations that we'd started a bit sooner.
Yeah, and I think it's really challenging for parents when we don't yet know the effects of these technologies as they're rapidly evolving along
Yeah.
with us. And I feel like I'm on the brink of a lot of these conversations and grateful for the resources that are coming out.
Hmm.
Families in our town have signed on to this national Wait Until Eighth campaign,
Huh.
which says
I don't
to
know
wait
that.
until the end of eighth grade before giving kids a smartphone. Which, I I've signed it. I fully support it. But, some friends with middle schoolers are saying, yes, I agree. And my kids have increasing independence. They're going for a bike ride with friends. I drop them off at sports practice and
Hmm.
I need a way to get in touch with them. And so some are trying out watches where you can get in touch, but you're not giving them the full access to a smartphone.
Sure.
So I think this is going to continue to unfold faster than we can keep up,
Yeah. And we can't just expect caregivers to be the only people holding the answers. So we
for
need
sure.
to have our systems out there
Yeah,
giving good guidance and helping set regulations around what's happening. Right.
absolutely. So, to wrap up idea 2, let's keep in mind that the constant connection of technology can actually leave kids feeling more alone than ever. And as caregivers, informing ourselves about the pros and cons of new technology products, having conversations with our kids to build responsible use habits, and holding boundaries that are going to have long term positive impacts, even if that, short term disappointment is really challenging.
Challenging. Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's a great, I think, transition to get us to idea 3. Um, we've spent a lot of time in our episodes talking about what caregivers can do for kids.
Hmm.
So I think we should flip the script a little bit. And
Let's do it.
for idea 3, we should say something that we don't say out loud enough is that caregivers are lonely too. It's the teacher or the coach who constantly pours into kids but has no one pouring back, or the parent who's surrounded by their children all day long but is deeply, quietly isolated.
Yeah.
I laugh about this story about a friend of mine who also is a school psychologist. And years ago, when we were both had our young kids around there, she says to me one day that she realized that the cable company had called her to do a survey about her experiences, and she realized she kept the person on the phone for like an hour just to have somebody to talk to. And
Oh, yeah.
it's funny, but it was loneliness, right?
I remember those days when all you've done is talk with an infant and no adult connection.
For sure.
Oh my goodness. And this absolutely matters developmentally. You started out by sharing that recent research from Ong and Man about relationships that compound across a lifetime
Hmm.
into health and longevity outcomes. And the implications of adult isolation is not just a personal wellness problem. The caregiver that's chronically lonely and depleted can't be a consistent co-regulator for kids.
That's right.
And, we can't pour from an empty regulation bucket. I think this is why we care so much about postpartum depression. We need parents or caregivers to be the full emotion regulation for infants. And
Hmm.
if they are isolated or depressed, they can't do that to the same extent.
Yeah.
And so, we talked about this quite a bit in episode 1, but it's just as true here.
Yeah. It's true in every episode. And there's definitely a dimension that we shouldn't skip over. In many communities, particularly where the school or the organization was not designed with certain families in mind, loneliness could carry a stigma that makes it even harder to name. So, admitting disconnection can feel like admitting failure.
Hmm.
But for some families, it is structural,
Yes.
right? It's the parent at every practice that nobody speaks to. It's forms sent in English when Spanish or Farsi is the home language. So it's that structural invisibility has its own form of loneliness. And although Feel Your Best Self can do a lot of things, this doesn't get fixed by a check in to recognize how you're feeling. So I think I really want to make sure that we do that. We emphasize that gets fixed when the systems decide that those families belong in the room.
Yes. Such a great point. And so let's think about some small actions that we each can take to make sure that caregivers feel connected.
Mhm. All right.
So first, assuming that you're connected to some sort of system. So maybe that's a school, a team, an organization. Let's look for the structures that exist to build adult connection, real human connection. So, I think back to that social worker that we worked with.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He was great.
He made sure that he knew the favorite candy of every staff member. And he would bring it by and then offer them a quick break, happy to, do you need to step out to use the bathroom or, just take a few minutes? really taking the time to, step in for folks and, give them that moment that they might need.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the next thing, the first thing we need to do is name it. Especially as adults, I think we're often waiting for permission to say, I feel lonely in this role. Elementary teachers report this when we ask, it's 25 kids and them all day. It's,
Mhm.
kind of a grown up version of that parent with the infant all day long. And
And
then,
not too many social workers stopping by with candy.
no,
Okay.
that's not the norm.
Yeah.
I don't think. And then third, find one person in your caregiving world, just one, a colleague, a co-parent, a coaching partner. Invest in that relationship, just a little. It's amazing how that small investment can lead to a big reward for both you and them.
Yeah, I love that. So notice the caregivers that you might connect with, the person who is sitting alone or not even in the room, and how you also might like to connect with others.
Mhm.
We can we can lean into the feel your best self strategies to connect with others because that's one of them.
Yeah,
Then there are
for
simple
sure.
options, everything from bring a high five, sharing
Yep,
something like, "Hey, I like that uh sweater that you're wearing," to a
sure.
random person in an elevator, right? Or thanks for holding the door for me.
Mhm.
Sharing friendly wishes, being a kind helper,
Yep,
or just listening to somebody to feel it together. So, you know, all simple things
very
to
simple.
strangers and people you know.
Yep.
As we close up idea 3, I think it's good to remember that those simple acts can be directed to adults too, and really can make a world of difference, not just for the kids, but for the adults who care for them.
So important. We ready to turn to our audience questions?
I think so.
All right. We got a new one recently from the parent of a middle schooler.
Okay. What is it?
Here we go. My 12-year-old has a group chat with her friends, and they constantly text. But she comes home and cries that she has no real friends. I don't know what I'm seeing.
Huh. Okay, so that one's totally real, right? And I think what we're seeing is the mismatch we've been talking about all along. A group chat full of texts,
Mhm.
but somehow leaving you feeling empty. Um, so the crying at home, let's think about that not as a problem to solve, but as a sign that she trusts you enough to fall apart in front of you. And what she's describing, constant contact, but no real connection, it might not be a friendship problem. Instead, that's a technology problem
Mm,
wearing a costume of a friendship problem.
I like that. And that might actually, that points to a different solution. So let's resist the urge to troubleshoot the group chat. Let's get curious instead. Not who's being mean to you, but let's flip it. Is there one person where you feel like you can be yourself? That
Okay.
one real relationship is more protective than 100 digital ones.
Sure.
Now, if she can't name anyone, that's also important information. And that's
Yep.
when we can start thinking about where to build that relationship. Is it
Hmm.
a team that she's a part of, a club, somewhere with repeated contact and a shared purpose?
Somewhere real.
You got it.
Okay. Love that. Great, great, great advice. Let's move to question 2. We're going back to high school. I'm a high school teacher. I love my students, but I go home most days feeling completely invisible. Like the work I do doesn't matter to anyone. My spouse doesn't understand. I feel like I have no one to talk to.
Hmm. First, you're not alone in this feeling. Teacher loneliness and depletion is documented, it's real, and it's systematically underaddressed.
Hmm.
What you're describing is not a weakness, it is the predictable result of doing really emotionally demanding work in a system that rarely asks how you're doing.
Okay. So here's what I might suggest we could try. Find one person, one colleague, one person in your building who you can say the honest version of how you're doing, not the professional one, right? The real one. Because we know that research on social support is consistent that we don't need a huge network. We really just need one person who actually knows what our day was like. And if that person isn't at school, then find them outside of it. Maybe
Yeah.
a former colleague, a mentor, someone who has done the work and gets it. My best friend is somebody I went to grad school with many, many, many years ago,
Mhm.
and we worked together in the same system.
Yeah. And then in terms of your partner, let's try to teach the people closest to us what our work actually looks like.
Mhm.
So you might try sharing a specific moment from your day, not the overview, but the specific moment.
Okay.
Today, a kid said something to me that stopped me cold. Give them that entry point. It's an invitation to connection, and it tends to work better than you don't understand my job.
Or me. Yeah. The bigger picture than
Right.
do the small. Okay. So from the feel your best self frame, I think we would say that caregiver wellness is not separate from child outcomes, right? So when you invest in your own connection and regulation, you bring a more regulated, more available presence to your students. And that's not selfish. That is the actual work. Yeah. So for you listeners out there, remember that we are here for your questions. So bring them on. And I think we should transition to our takeaway. What's your one takeaway, Jess?
Let's do it. One takeaway to feel our best self. This week, we're going to do a 2-part challenge.
Ooh.
First, simple, reach out to one person and let them know that you're thinking of them. No agenda, no expectation for a response, just a hello.
Seriously, just a hello.
Just a hello.
Okay.
Just that reaching out can boost our own mood. And then any response we get is an added bonus.
Like the frosting on the cake.
You got it.
Best part. You said it was a 2-part challenge. So what's the second part?
All right. So the second part is to schedule one piece of connection that fills you up. Maybe a walk with a partner, coffee with a friend, or a phone call with a loved one. Sometimes making the time is the biggest barrier, but the connection that we can create will have a positive ripple effect for days.
Okay. So the second part's a little bigger,
Yep.
but just as important.
Yep.
Okay. So reach out to one person to let them know I'm thinking of them and try to schedule one piece of connection, even if it's small.
You got it.
I'm on it. That wraps up today's episode where we talked about how we're all increasingly connected, but yet lonely. We're reminded that when it comes to relationships, quality is much more important than quantity, and that genuine opportunities to connect matter the most. Loneliness is not just the absence of people, it's the absence of feeling and being truly seen. And that can be fixed. One honest question, one moment of eye contact, or one adult who decides to notice.
If you recognized yourself in this episode as a caregiver, we see you. You deserve the same connection you're trying to build for the kids you care for. We'll see you next time
on the FYBS Playbook.
Every day you feel a million things, but I promise that it all will be okay. I'll think of you and what you do